it is quite possible to do a transmission flush with this car by taking this out, but I think it'll be a little bit easier because you're gonna have to take a few of these bolts out and get access to it to take it off and get to that clip. I think it'd be a little bit easier if you could just jack this guy up and get underneath the transmission. So that's my preference. So my 3-ton car jacket right here. I have my fluid container, jack stands for safety. I also recommend that you get 3 1-gallons of Dextron 6 Valvoline Max Life Full Synthetic. The car and manual recommends Dextron 3, but that is no longer made, so this is the next best option. So I'm going to flush, and then at a later date I'm going to drop the pan and change the transmission filter. Alright, so you can pull this here off like that. Screw that down a little bit. It's a little bit loose, but you can see that there's that clip there. To get that clip out, you're gonna need to use this here small edge. It has to be really tiny, but also strong as well. But if you get in those cracks and then push up. So now I got the E-clip off a little bit. I'm gonna keep pushing so I can get it off. Alright, so I pulled the hose off, outbound hose. You gotta wiggle around and play with it a little bit after you take the E-clip off. And I sprayed a little bit of brake fluid in there so I can loosen it up. Just played around with it and end up taking the guy off. But you can see that that fluid needs to get changed. Alright, so now I'm gonna go ahead and use this 3/8 vinyl hosing. So that 3/8 vinyl hosing doesn't go in there too well. So I try to use the transmission line to kind of hold it up a little bit. Hopefully it will hold out when the fluid starts to flow out. But we just wanted to do that so we can get a controlled spill into the pan. Next, I'm going to go ahead and start her up. So, that didn't go as planned. I grabbed a 5-gallon bucket and added water in it to dilute the old fluid that hit the pavement, and then used another bucket to catch the remaining transmission fluid, which was better anyway because it had quartz measurements on the side. I did find out that there was some metal shavings suspended in the fluid. Now, the transmission fluid was slightly dark, but there was still some reddish look to it, especially from the dipstick. I do consider that this car received a flush a few years ago at around 160,000 miles, but no record of a filter replacement or flush before that. I made sure I topped off on every section, the exception being the messy section where fluid got on the pavement. To put the proper amount back in, just make sure to measure how much is coming out and replace it with new fluid. There are a few methods and I'm confident my viewers can figure it out. Anyway, I just took the fluid from the bucket and placed it in my drain container. Everything was pretty straightforward. At the last flush, the fluid is clear and reflective. Once satisfactory, just make sure to put the line back in with the E-clip to secure it and clean up. I know it's difficult to see the color because of the blue tile, but the fluid was solid red. Now, I did experience some slippage in the transmission after the flush. There was some metallic material inside the old fluid that's probably helping the gears grip during transitions. Although 1 bottle of Lucas transmission fix decreased slippage, it was still apparent. Before adding more, I just wanted to replace the filter to see if it would make a difference. Here's the gasket, and here is the air filter. Inspect and make sure it's good, looks fine. So here's the underside of the vehicle if you've never seen it. This is the operation area. You can see that transmission pan is there. I'm going to be using a 10mm socket. Go ahead and take the bolts off the trans pan. So you can see I went ahead and loosened it on this side first. Took the bolts out because I want to tilt it this way going into the pan. And you can already see transmission fluid starting to drip. So this thing goes ahead and tilts right inside the bucket. So I'm just slowly trying to insert it in there. And just put a little bit of pressure on it so we can get it to drain just like that. Go let this thing drain out. You might want to get an extra pan too because you might have some of it spill over extra. Alright, so I went ahead and got the rest of these bolts back here and left one here and unloosened it just enough to go ahead and let this cover tilt so we can get the rest of it off. It's always a good idea to put bolts together and put them somewhere where you remember. Alright, so here's our cover here. Take that off. And our method of cleaning the cover, brake parts cleaner. And I got 2 cans of these too, by the way, because this is pretty much almost empty from the flush and all the other stuff I've done on the car. But I put it in a 5-gallon bucket, and I sprayed it down, let it all run through. And I'm gonna go and take it and wash it even better. All right, so this is what I'll be using to help clean up the transmission cover. Now that that's finished, go ahead and get some silicone gel, lubricant, and we're gonna place it on the outside here so that way the gasket can sit on there and we don't have to worry about it falling or moving off when we try to put it back on the transmission. So I'll put ahead and put the drop silicone gel all around and go ahead and smear it in before we put the gasket on. Alright, so I went ahead and just used this glove here and just smeared it all along. You want to keep it as much from the edges as you possibly can. You want to keep it on this here. You can do it outside, that's fine, but we want to keep it from like that, for example, from coming in. I'm going to try to push that up. But for the most part, the majority of it is on the outside. Got the gasket on there, line the holes up as best as you can. You can try to do another adjustment just to make sure before you put it up, because we don't want any problems in the future. But see, when I put the silicone on there and I tilt it, it's not falling off. So, so yeah, here we are, and then I got my pliers, so I just go ahead and pull it out. Can't do it with 2 hands. Whoopty, what do you do? Yeah, I accidentally pushed the plastic up in there a little bit, but luckily, hold up, let me get that flashlight, man. You can see it's nowhere really for it to go, so yeah, I was trying to slide it underneath. But yeah, be careful of that. We taking that filter off. It should really just slide right off, but I guess this is so old, it's got settled in and coming out. Yeah, so good. So getting those pliers, if you push it in there a little bit, you'll be fine. You can see that there's a wall up there, so it's not like it's going to go into the transmission unless you break into many pieces. Which is pretty hard to do in the condition it is. So just be aware of that if you have that problem. So here's the old transmission filter. I'm just checking to make sure it is exactly the same as the one I'm going to replace it with. And lo and behold, pretty much it's the same thing here. You just want to make sure and check that. So we got a little stopping point here. Just as hard as it was to take out the old filter, it's a little difficult to put in the new one. Now there's a ring that is in there that held the filter in place, and I just went ahead and used the same one because it's pretty hard to take off and I don't want to risk damage anything, so I'm gonna leave it in there. But I'm trying to put it in there some more. If you have a mallet or a hammer, just lightly tap it on it. Don't hit it too hard because you'll damage the filter, and put it in place. We don't want to do any lateral movements because we might risk breaking the new filter. When you tap it right here, right, you want to make sure that this part right here goes flush past this part here. But you just want to turn it just a little bit so you can guide it in there while you're hitting it in. Don't turn it rough and stuff like how I broke the old filter. Just turn it just a little bit and that'll help guide it in. And you obviously want to hit directly under so it's pushing up and not pushing pressure anywhere else because you could potentially break it. And I guess I don't have room for error. Alright, so for this part here, you're going to need 8mm, and this is optional, but I would just turk these down a little bit too as well, because it's been probably 18 years since this has been touched, so I accidentally stripped that one a little bit, but everything else good. Tighten these up with 8mm, and these over here were 10, but those are pretty much locked in place. I didn't have to tighten those at all. So now that's done, I'm going to put the trans pan back on. Also went ahead and hit the old bolts with a little bit of brake cleaner too before I proceed to put them back in there. Alright, so trans pan is back up. Now there's a certain way you want to tighten this up. Alright, so first off, you can hand tighten them. You should hand tighten all of them in before you actually torque them down. But I use a drill just to go ahead and speed it in there. Really light setting, but I just speed them all in. Okay, but before I tighten it, you can start in the front or you can start in the back. I started in the back with this bolt back here. Okay. And then what I went ahead and did is I went crisscross to this bolt here. Okay, so I just went from here to there, and I've tried to keep it even. So if I'm doing it over here, then I'm doing this one next. So that way it's kind of an even tight. Now when you get here, you know, I kind of did these two the same, and then I did this one back here, and then I just hit these pretty much in sequence. And then same thing with this over here. I hit these, and then I came over across and did that one, and so forth. So once that's accomplished, you're pretty much done. I would say turn on the car while the car is suspended in the air just to check and make sure that you don't have any leaks. But put transmission fluid in there first, because remember we did lose some. And the old filter is in there, so I can kind of minus that. But I have about, you can kind of see on the line there, 75. Well, that's probably about 3/4. We're gonna take it out. Now since this is new transmission fluid, I just flushed it. I'm gonna go ahead and put that right back in there. Even though this filter's in there, it should be fine. But I got about 1.5 quart left of brand new. So I'm gonna put the new one first, and then I'll just go ahead and put the rest. It shouldn't hurt it at all. So after that was done, I turned the car on and waited about 4 minutes and checked the transmission fluid. You're supposed to check it while it's hot. And after that, it was filled up to an optimal level. So after the filter replacement, I noticed the slippage from time to time. So I added another bottle of Lucas transmission fix, and now the slippage is minimal, especially after 150 plus miles since the change. I also noticed smoother gear shifts as well. Hopefully this was beneficial to those who watched. Until next time.